Hello, everybody, and welcome. Hey, I'm Janice Thornton with JT Fitness and Golf, and welcome to On the First Tee with JT. So I love interviewing people, and I have found a great one for you today. And I am very happy to welcome Jawan Kim to On the First Tee with JT. So welcome, Jawan. And Jawan is with Live Chiropractic Center in San Ramon. And now some of you might be thinking, a chiropractor, Janice, why are you talking with a chiropractor? What I like about Jawan is he does things a little bit differently. And if most of you are thinking of your typical chiropractor, you're going to want to stay on because Jawan is not your typical chiropractor. So welcome, Jawan. Welcome to On the First Tee with JT.
Thank you so much, Janice, for having me. Yeah, it was so nice to meet you, and I've been looking forward to this interview for a long, long time.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad. Okay, so what made you pursue chiropractics?
Yeah, so my introduction to chiropractic, I don't have like I got in a motor vehicle accident and chiropractic saved my life story that a lot of chiropractors do. I was actually on the route of going into physical therapy, or sorry, first let me backtrack, athletic training first. And when I got into my school for undergrad, the year I got in, they bumped that up to a master's program, which meant that you had to do 2 more years. And it's ironic because I ended up doing 3 more extra years, but at that time I didn't want to do any extra grad school. So then I dipped my toes into physical therapy, thought that, this would be the one for me, but after a couple internships, I realized that it wasn't the one. So I went about 2 semesters in college, kind of just going through the motions with my studies, not really knowing what to do, because I didn't have a passion for anything. It wasn't until I went to my friend's dad's chiropractic office, who's obviously a chiropractor, and he was nice enough to come, let me shadow, kind of see what he did, meet his patients, and it didn't lit a fire in me, but I thought, hey, this seems interesting enough. Why don't I just kind of give it a shot? Worst thing happens, I don't have to follow through with it, but I'll never know if I don't give it a shot. So I ended up applying to Life Chiropractic College West in Hayward in the summer of 2020. That program was 3.5 years, and I graduated in November or December of 2024. So
Nice.
that's how I got into chiropractic, and we'll get into upper cervical a little later. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask because this is what makes you different than most chiropractors
Mm.
is, most of us think of chiropractors as being snap, crackle, pop, and then you're always adjusting the whole body. But
Yeah.
you specifically work upper cervical chiropractic. So tell people what that is.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I mean, even myself, the first 3 years, I was fully set on doing just the traditional chiropractic, and upper cervical chiropractic as a technique is such a niche in America. I think less than 1% of the population actually practices upper cervical.
Mhm.
Um, But essentially, what upper cervical chiropractic is, the cervical is the 7 bones of your neck. That's what makes the cervical spine. Upper cervical emphasizes the first and second bone of the neck. And it's a conservative approach to chiropractic. I don't know what those balloons were. Did you see that, Janice?
I did.
Yeah, that was interesting. Anyways, yeah, it's a more conservative approach to chiropractic that emphasizes less is more. So less in the sense that the same way that, we only go get a cavity filling when we have a cavity, right? We don't just go get a cavity filling for fun, or the same way that we only wear a cast when we have a fracture. Upper cervical chiropractor, the philosophy is that you really only need an adjustment when you really need an adjustment. It's the same, an adjustment is the same thing as like a stimulant, like a pill. Like it's something that the body receives from the outside that helps restore proper communication between the brain and body. But if there's nothing to restore, then there's really no adjustment needed. So that's what I mean by less is more. It's not like you come in, you get cracked in 3 different spots, and then you leave. It's a lot more, I guess, data driven with the analysis that we do. And our goal really is not to adjust, because if we don't adjust, then your body and nervous system is functioning the way that it should.
Nice. So how would you explain upper cervical chiropractic to the general public? Like when you and I talked about it, you talked about now I forgot not the fuse box, but the
Yeah,
fuse
that's a
box.
really good analogy. Yeah,
Yep, yep.
yeah. So I love this analogy. Even when I was a student studying chiropractic, this analogy helped me really understand it better and kind of pushed me over the fence to upper cervical. But if we compare, let's imagine a house, right? And if we compare the spine to the house and the electricity distribution in the house is completely gone, we can go around all 5 rooms and change the light bulb in every single room, and that might restore electricity temporarily. But what we find out is that a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, even sometimes 2 weeks later, the electricity will go down again, right? So we can address the area of the spine or the room, and it'll temporarily relieve it, but it is very common that the pain will always come back. The electricity will always go down. Now, the reason I mentioned the fuse box is because unless the fuse box is properly addressed and properly running, no amount of light bulb in each room will ever restore proper distribution. So that just alludes back to my whole less is more. Why go around every single room and address every single room just to provide temporarily relief or provide temporary electrical distribution, when you can go straight to the fuse box, address that only, and then restore proper communication or proper electricity to the whole house.
Yeah, I love that analogy because it's nice that you can just go to the cervical spine instead and make that adjustment to help go to make the flow better.
Yeah.
So,
And
oh, go ahead.
yeah, just one last thing I wanted to add. The reason we address the cervical spine, we're not just saying it because we're saying it. It's because the brainstem, which acts between the bridge between the brain and body, lies directly in the first bone. So anatomically, there's a huge hole in that first bone,
Mhm.
and the brainstem, which lies in between it, goes straight into it. So if a misalignment occurs in the top neck and it impinges on that brainstem, that's when the fuse box shuts down. That's when you see less electricity being properly distributed. And if we compare that back to the body and the spine, that's when a cascade of symptoms can happen.
Nice. So, how can misalignments in the upper cervical spine affect overall health and well-being?
Yeah, so there's my mentor doc in school explained this to me, but there's a phenomenon called the riding reflex that every human being possesses. And essentially all that states is that as humans, we are biologically wired to see everything on a horizontal plane, right?
Mhm.
Um, and even we can do it right now. We can tilt our head, but because of that riding reflex, our bodies are naturally going to want to make adjustments so that even though our head was tilted, now we're on that horizontal plane. But look what happens to the rest of my body. The rest of our body has to make compensations. And when that top bone is misaligned, then over time, years after, our body will make compensations that will allow us to see things clearly on a horizontal level, but our low back, our thoracic spine, even our lower cervicals, they become deviated and translated. That can cause a lot of stress on not just our spine, but also just our musculature and everything else. And Janice, you and I are such big golfers. It has such there's a, really big correlation to golf. As golfers, yes, it is more of a stationary sport than basketball or football, but even in our setup, right? Especially if we want to set up with a driver, our left shoulder is so much higher than our right, and that causes my neck to be translated. Look at my head tilt, right? So even in that, it causes a lot of misalignments to the rest of the body, and especially with all the torque that the golf swing requires, it could definitely affect that a lot as well.
Well, then we have to take the club away too and rotate, have our spine rotate and keep
Yeah.
our, yeah, golf is
Yeah.
definitely hard on your body for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you just share with everybody like one case that really stood out to you the most that you're willing to share?
Yeah. I'm fairly new, obviously just graduated, so I don't have a lot of amazing cases, but I can share one off the top of my head. I had a patient come in with 8 out of 9 thoracic pain. So mid-scapular area, about T5, T4. And she was actually under full spine care for a really long time with me. And this was when I was still on the edge between full spine or upper cervical. So I was providing full spine care for her. She came in about twice a week and she would get adjusted twice at the area of complaint. And there were weeks where the pain went down from 7, 8 to like a 3, 4 out of 10, which was awesome. But it still limited her from being able to do certain activities because of the pain. So then about 8 weeks after care, or sorry, about 2 months after care, yeah, 8 weeks, I transitioned her from full spine to upper cervical. So through upper cervical, we used computerized infrared thermography to see if there was neuropathophysiology present, which there was. And then after that, we took biomechanical x-rays. So in biomechanical x-rays or in upper cervical, we're not necessarily assessing the static view of the bone. We're assessing the function over symmetry. This idea that the body is perfectly symmetrical is absolutely false. Even if you look at the crease of your hands, you'll notice that even the creases are different. So then how is every single bone going to be symmetrical? It's not. So we assess if, if you tilt your head to the right, to the left, are the two bones functioning the way that it should? If you tilt your head to the left, are the two bones functioning the way that it should? If it's not, then bingo, there's our listing, and that's what we'll adjust to restore proper function into the bone. And in this particular patient, her top bone wasn't moving at all. Even in her left head tilt or her right head tilt, it was just completely stuck. So um, I adjusted her top bone, upper cervical, and after that, we do post checks. So we'll do a pre-scan and then a post-scan to see if there was any change. And after the first visit, I'm not gonna lie, there was no change. It was completely the same. But she came back next week, 6 days later, and the scan, it was like unrecognizable to her pre-scan. It was completely different, which means that her body adapted to the adjustment. And I would palpate her thoracic spine to see if there was any pain, which there usually is about 5 to 7 out of 10 level pain. And she said it was a 1 at most.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, through adjusting the top bone of the neck, um, her body was able to adapt and her body was able to give itself the opportunity to heal and regenerate on its own. So then after that, I think I adjusted her maybe 4 times the rest of the year.
See,
When it used
that's
to be,
nice.
yeah, when
That's
it used to
nice.
be 2 adjustments a week.
Well, and that's what I think for a lot of people that they're thinking, oh, I have to go see the chiropractor 3 times a week to get better.
Yeah,
When you just showed how actually, no, you see you less,
yeah,
where less is more
yeah,
again.
yeah, less
Um,
is more.
and if you can reduce how much someone has to actually come see you, that's great for the patient. And
Hmm.
that's what's nice. Okay, Joanne, talk about Live Chiropractic Center in San Ramon. How do people get a hold of you?
Hmm.
All of that.
Yeah, so like Janice said, we are located on the edge of Danville and San Ramon. It is not just me. I actually work with Alexa Chillian, who is the owner of Live Chiropractic. She's been an upper cervical doctor, for about 7 years now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So she was with a franchise, left, opened up her own practice and live. And I'm joining her this year as her first associate. But yeah, we're really easy to reach. You can find us on Instagram at Live Chiropractic Center, Facebook, Live Chiropractic Center, and Google us as well. And I think both of our emails are listed almost on every single post on Instagram. So yeah,
Okay,
Instagram would be the most easiest way to reach out to us.
nice. Well, Jawan, thank you so much for being on the first tee with JT. And everyone have a fantastic day.